It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either at my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. I'm uploading tons and tons and tons of court documents and videos, all kinds of stuff about the Mar-a-Lago search warrant. I got a ton of it. I even got a picture. We just got a picture of Hunter S. Thompson admitting to being involved in snuff films, okay? That just went up in the free section of Patreon. So Opperman Report Patreon. I got a ton of stuff going up there. Everything you hear Monday to Friday, AM/FM radio, you can find on Patreon, ad-free, commercials cut out. You like our show, go to Spreaker.com. That's where our archives are. And if you go there and you put in Opperman Spreaker, Spreaker, Daniel Hopsicker, you'll find about 7 or 8 shows I've done with the great Daniel Hopsicker. You can find his work at madcowprod.com, where he writes articles doing investigative reporting that you will find nowhere else. He's written a book. It's about to come out called Gangster Planet. But he's got a bunch of classic books that are gold. Barry and the Boys, the CIA, the Mob, and America's Secret History. Barry Seal, Only in America. Welcome to Terrorland, Muhammad Atta and the 9/11 cover-up in Florida. Conspiracy... is that Daniel Hopsicker? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Conspiracy, The Secret. Welcome to Terrorland, Muhammad Atta and the Flying Circus. Bushfellas, When the Mob Went Republican, All Hell Broke Loose.
Never wrote that.
Really? Says Daniel Hopsicker.
Yeah, I know. I never got around to it.
Oh. Okay, well, you can put a pre-order in there. Maybe he'll get around to it one day. I love you, man. I love you. Daniel Hopsicker, welcome to the show, brother.
Pleasure, Ed. And hearing your intro reminds me that because you are an authentic a private investigator,
yeah.
You know, just by virtue of your occupation, 5 times as much as almost anyone else does, just going in. You already know that conspiracy, if it's not fact-based, isn't even all that interesting. So there you go. Now, Hunter S. Thompson, you say?
Yes, my friend. We got a letter. This fellow wrote a letter to Hunter S. Thompson asking about snuff films. And in a red pen, written back on the back of the letter in return, Hunter S. Thompson, in his own handwriting, says, the only snuff film I'm aware of is the one that I did with Jack Nicholson. I can't talk about it until after 1995. Be careful about this because they'll kill you. I'll send it to you, my friend. I'll send it to
you. I know something about Hunter S. Thompson. That's certainly new to me.
What do you?
But I'm no expert. I know something about Hunter S. Thompson that you'll find interesting.
What do you got?
He was a CIA agent.
Really?
Yes, and it makes perfect sense. Hunter S. Thompson was in the Air Force, stationed at Elmendorf, whatever that big Air Force base up in the Panhandle is. And when he was a writer there. He was writing press releases and stuff. And when he got out, his story for the next 3 years after he got out of the Air Force is that as a lark, he decided to bum around South America. And he spent like 2 years down there. We went everywhere, and he had no income and no money going into it. The CIA was doing lots of stuff down there. David Ferry took a whole tour down there, just like Hunter S. Thompson. This is like in the 50s. So And so later, when Hunter S. Thompson comes along with like the most original, amazing stuff you've ever seen or heard, now I can understand why. And I can understand why he spoke with such authority, because he knew stuff.
You know what? That's not the first time I heard that. There's a fellow out there with a whole, I think he might have even written a book or an article about it. And I recall trying to get a hold of him to come on the show and talk about it. But this confirms it then. Excellent work there. So Daniel Hopsicker, why don't you remind the audience who Daniel Hopsicker is?
Oh, I'm sure your audience is well aware. Let's talk about, I mean, it's amazing facts we're here to discuss, right?
Right.
Let's talk about John Gray. Okay? I mean, just in the course of investigating this and that, okay, I come across amazing stuff that I had never even known existed, okay? So we're going to work around to Adnan Khashoggi here, who appears to me to have been like one of the CIA's leading players in the 90s and the 2000s, Adnan Khashoggi, who nobody really thinks about that much. But the way I want to work you into this is by telling you about Khashoggi's relationship with Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, John Gray. Okay?
Okay.
And actually, this is like a root story in Gangster Planet, because Gangster Planet is about Russiagate, and this is Russiagate. Okay? John Gray was bought by Adnan Khashoggi because Adnan Khashoggi owned a company that was the most successful in making what the U.S. made. The Russians made hackers and Viagra spam, and what Americans made were infomercials. And so Khashoggi and his minions were making tons of money on infomercials, and he bought John Gray. 10 months after Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus came out, it was like ready for the remainder shelves, okay? It hadn't done anything. And Khashoggi bought him and, I mean, the whole bit. And then, made him into the man that sold 10 million copies of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And that's interesting because in the growth of transnational organized crime, which is basically the U.S. and Russia together, okay, the Russians are doing the same thing we were, but in a different way. The Russians are really good at math, okay? So spam was their big deal, okay? And when the premier Russian hacker moved to the U.S. in 2003 and lived in a house in Howard's Beach, near where John Gotti was from, with a Tampa mobster named Mike Muzio, okay? And what the Russian, who later became Russia's biggest hacker, what he was doing back then was handling the back end. If you remember, this is 2003 now, right? Of 30 to 40 mob porn sites. Okay, and this is back when there was a time when it was not, PayPal, I don't think, was handling anything like that. So this Russian guy with this company called ChronoPay, which is like a low rent PayPal, handled the back end. And the Tampa mobster Mike Muzio was, at that time, his company was owned by Adnan Khashoggi. Okay, so we have a Saudi CIA fixer, arms dealer and fixer, okay, owning a company being run by a Tampa mobster, a funny Tampa mobster. I mean, he's a sad sack. And working with them and for them, well, who knows what the or for is this Russian mobster-sponsored hacker named Pavel Red Eye Wroblewski, Red Eye Wroblewski, who later becomes, now whoever heard of this guy? Nobody heard of him, okay? But he was there in 2003, 2004, running the back end of this. So even back then, the Russian mob had obviously a relationship, who knows how big, with the mafia, with the U.S. mob. Okay. So and that you know, and that is where transnational organized crime appears to me to have originated. But you know, it probably goes back further than that. But okay, I got Adnan Khashoggi, this Tampa mobster, and this Russian hacker doing business together in 2003 in Howard Beach, Queens, which is where John Gotti's from. You with me so far?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Khashoggi is an interesting character, and he bought John Gray. So he took a book that was on its way to remainder shelves a year after it was released and turned it into the best-selling book, I think, besides the Bible, of all times. There are 10 million. He sold 10 million copies of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Now, that's pretty interesting, but why I'm interested in John Gray is for a different reason, okay? I attended the very first 9/11 conference after the attack, which is like a year afterwards, okay? And what I saw there was like pretty appalling. It was like a UFO meeting. They had assembled a bunch of people that had an opinion about what it, as if, you know, it was ridiculous. I mean, we were discussing the murder of nearly 3,000 of our fellow citizens, you know, as if it was like a suitable discussion for a conspiracy list.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the only one I went to. Okay, and I left there a little early, but I had friends that went to the next one, which was in Toronto. Okay, and guess who the main speaker there was? John Gray. John Gray,
yeah, he took over. Okay. Yeah,
he must have figured out the terrorists are from Jupiter. Okay, and he was funding it, but he wasn't funding it. He was funding for Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi created, probably not single-handedly, but his money, created the 9/11 truther movement. And why would he do something like that? To spread disinformation. Because as long as it was publicly ridiculous to think anything about 9/11 could have been other than what they told us it was, you were a conspiracy theorist. Okay.
Wait 1 second. People need to let that sink in. Adnan Khashoggi, at one time he was known as the world's richest man, of the Saudi financier, but really he was an arms dealer. Many allegations he was a drug dealer. By his own admission, he was a human trafficker. He admitted using prostitutes and escorts to get arms contracts and stuff like that. Jeffrey Epstein worked for Khashoggi. Best friends at one point with Donald Trump. They sold a yacht back and forth. Well, it's very mysterious dealings there. With really no explanation. Where Khashoggi's selling his boat to Trump and then throwing a party on it a couple of weeks later, like he still owned it, you know?
Did I tell you? I named. See, Donald Trump is clearly part of the mob.
Yeah,
he's a mobster. But nobody knows the name of his organization. He's not like, you know, it's not like the Gambino family, okay, or the Purple Gang back in the day, who I call them the Palm Beach homies. Mm. You know, Trump and Khashoggi go way back, and who knows the exchange of the boat of the yacht wasn't part of something else.
Yeah.
but there you go. So that's Donald Trump and then Khashoggi. But no, that's not what I'm telling you about John Gray right now.
But the thing is, but Khashoggi is the man who inserts himself and takes over the 9/11 Truth movement through John Gray, which is, and here's this guy with all these Saudi Arabian shady background, where all the hijackers came from, all the shadiness, and he's the one who takes over 9/11 Truth movement.
So, the only reason you probably read a thread I did on Twitter,
yeah,
about Adnan Khashoggi and the 9/11 Truth movement, and that's because Adnan Khashoggi became probably one of the principal focuses of Gangster Planet. He was involved in, I'm not going to tell you over the drug trafficking and financial fraud. I'm not sure what they made most from. Adnan Khashoggi, for example, and this isn't widely known, was involved in two major bank frauds at once that busted out two global companies, like one in Bangkok and one in Germany, and the German one, the Austrian one. It was estimated that he cleared $2 billion. Okay? That's in one deal. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you go. John Gray's a fascinating guy all by himself, okay? How I found out about Adnan Khashoggi and John Gray was because at one time I was interested in following the Heaven's Gate story, which John Gray was peripherally involved with. It turned out that Gray knew the leader of the cult. I forget what his name is. He looked like my favorite Martian. Remember?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And he had known him. He had known him in Houston in the 70s, and so I went, who is John Gray? And I did a search on John Gray, and I discovered the most amazing things. Okay, his father was a CIA agent.
Oh, really?
Okay, David Gray. Okay, was a Texas miner, wildcatter, and a CIA agent. And after he retired, this is the most bizarre story. After he retired, he was found murdered in the trunk of his car. He had been hijacked by a hitchhiker, supposedly the story goes. But he was just a weird guy. Okay, so John Gray had himself put into the trunk of a car.
Whoa!
And just, dude, this is a huge thing. Yeah, I'm interested in how did my dad die?
Yeah.
He got in the trunk of a car, and while he was in there, he saw a way that he could
get out.
That his dad could have escaped.
Right.
Okay. So, Adnan Khashoggi is a focus of the book of Gangster Planet. Adnan Khashoggi. I mean, you would think, okay, and so that leads me to probably the principal shocking revelation of the book, which is that everything they tell you about the drug war is wrong. Okay, that there are no competing cartels. All right. They think, the Medellin cartel was like at war with the Cali cartel, and now in Mexico they've got these guys fighting it out over the plaza with these other guys. and that may be the way it works on the bottom rung, but that's not the story of the drug business. 70% of the money that's spent on drugs in this country never leaves the U.S. So only 30% goes. 30% is what these guys are fighting over in Colombia and Mexico.
Let me ask you a quick question about Khashoggi. What do you make of this whole situation? And like his nephew was murdered at that embassy, right? What do you make of the news media's coverage of that whole situation? And then when Khashoggi died, there was really nothing in the press, or nothing at all mentioning how close he was to Trump.
Well, I mean, it wasn't just that. I mean, there are famous stories about Khashoggi that are most likely completely true.
Yeah.
He left a briefcase, intentionally left a briefcase of his in Richard Nixon's San Clemente hideaway, okay, with $1 million. And when someone from San Clemente called him to tell him, he said he had forgotten about it, and then he had hung up. So that's Adnan Khashoggi, a mover and a shaker on someone's behalf in the global scheme. A player, a big player. And then we find out he was fronting for the 9/11. I mean, I call them the Troofers. Troofers. Because and the thing is they would throw out these ridiculous conspiracy theories, one after the other, and as soon as one was debunked, they had an equally ingenious one.
Well, let me ask you a question, Daniel. John Gray, was he the one responsible for the no plane theory?
No. John Gray was just responsible for funding, and then he funded a documentary by one of these guys too. So right. I mean, he was probably his money. I knew that this was a disinformation operation. Okay, I knew that 15 years ago. All right. Then to find out that it's Adnan, and then to find out that I'm writing a book called Gangster Planet, and one of the principal characters is Adnan Khashoggi. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that.
Now, the reports are that he sort of died penniless, and that his ex-wife was working at a florist shop and stuff. Could he really have lost all his fortune?
I don't think so. No. Yeah. There are people that know the answer to that better than I. He lost a good part. I don't know how these things work. I mean, did he go from being a billionaire to a half a billionaire? It was It was a lot of it was hype anyway. But and here's the thing. All right, when you see someone that is completely effective at hype, okay, they're also they're on the inside.
Yeah.
Okay. Trump was like, has there been anybody that ever got more press than Donald Trump?
Yeah, Trump's control of the tabloids and his ability to kill stories about himself is legendary. And I've had people, I know people that did the dirty work for him, killing some of those stories. So, and I've seen it right up front.
He's interesting to watch in action because it's like having a ringside seat to John Gotti.
Yeah,
operating. Okay, it's like you're watching a mob boss at work.
Yeah, and it's a mob boss with because Keith Schiller, his head of security there, I've had personal interactions with him. Here's a guy who while he was a cop, ran a security business that would employ hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of NYPD cops and get them these off-duty gigs. Many of them were the bizarre to show up at funerals for rich, powerful people in their uniforms and play the bagpipes and all stuff like that. So these guys had an army of cops, and then he goes to work for Trump. You know, the guy, by the way, too, was recruiting for Blackwater. It was way back in the 90s and 2000s. He was recruiting for Blackwater, and he goes to work for Trump. You know, and
they're always way ahead of us, dude.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. But let's not get too far afield. We covered the stuff with John Gray. John Gray was a product of Adnan Khashoggi. Adnan Khashoggi was intelligence operative, smuggler, human trafficker, arms dealer, involved. They have a thing called 6 Degrees of Adnan Khashoggi, where this guy was involved in every scandal in history.
It turns out that is true, and they even tried to make that ridiculous. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, it is a fact that Khashoggi was involved in every American scandal in the second half of the 20th century. Okay? Beginning with stuff before you were born.
Now, how does this lead us to Brent Kovar and this Profit Connect and Skyway Communications down here in little old sleepy Florida in the Tampa Bay area, where a lot of stuff seems to happen?
Well, Tampa was where BCCI was.
Really?
Yeah. When it went under. When it went under in '91, both Adnan Khashoggi and his Rami Al-Batrawi, his lieutenant, had bases in the Tampa area.
Well, real quick, Daniel, where do these people hang out, man? Like, the only place I know is like the Vinoy seems to be like a hot spot. But where do these people hanging out down here? Where's the cool places? I don't run into any of these guys. You know?
You know what? Let's look at it in terms of the 80s.
Yeah.
Okay. It's easier to look back. Okay. You remember Mina?
Yes.
You remember while Bill Clinton was governor, they were running cocaine, and this is back in the days when cocaine was like gold, through Mena, Arkansas, okay? And why were they doing that? Well, because they had everything bought there, okay? It was a one-party state. Democrat, okay? One-party state. And now here we are in Florida.
Gotcha.
And who runs things back? Who runs Sarasota? Who runs Sarasota? That's what I know about, okay? I mean, Sarasota has been a, Republican rich guy stronghold since the time that John Ringling brought the Ringling Brothers Circus to Florida. And John Ring, no one will know this. John Ringling himself was a CIA associate, okay? And why would that be? Because he owned Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus, which was like one of the few, if not the only, theatrical enterprises the Russians ever let behind the Iron Curtain. So the circus would play in Moscow and would play places where the CIA denied access.
Yeah,
he also. This is a curious.
Go ahead.
A curious aside, right? One of the things I found out when I came down to Venice to investigate what the hell was going on before 9/11, that required so many Saudis to live here. Okay. What were we just talking about?
Well, Ringling Brothers.
Ringling Brothers, right. I thought, I discovered that there was a clown college in Venice where clowns would go and learn to clown. And I thought, could this have anything to do with 9/11? Well, it turns out it doesn't, and it does. I mean, the CIA used to send its newly minted operatives to clown college for sleight of hand. So, so the CIA had a presence in Venice that long preceded 9/11.
If you've ever been to the Ringling Museum, where John Ringling had his home down there, and you see, because they have little miniature models of what these circuses were like, and it was like a whole city. They had hundreds of horses and stables and cafeterias, equipment. Thousands of people were employed by the circus when they came to town. It was a town coming to town. So this was a hugely powerful. People like my age and your age think of the circus. Oh yeah, they came to Madison Square Garden when I was a kid and they were gone a week later. No way, man. Like the history of the circus, man. They were a town that came to town, and powerful, rich people, man.
And do you know what clinched it for me? All of John Ringling's employees hated him. Hated him.
Well, it's a beautiful museum, and I'm a member. I became a member. The grounds are gorgeous. It's right on the water there. They got a great little panini sandwich there in the restaurant, and beautiful exhibits. The guy lived in a castle, especially for the time. He had air conditioning in the 1800s. Yeah.
I could talk to you for a couple hours about Sarasota.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the Brent Kovar and this scam you uncovered here, the Ponzi under the palms.
So Brent Kovar was running, and he's a con man, a showman. His father was. His father used to put out that he was the animal wrangler on Lassie while he worked for the Department of Forestry, which is bizarre. Anyway, Brent's a slick talker, and he doesn't mind lying. And apparently, he's a sociopath. He has no conscience because he stole money from his girlfriend's parents in Skyway, which lost $40 million of investor money because it was nothing. It had no product. Okay, this was a company after 9/11. This was a 9/11 play. Okay. They boasted they had new black box technology that allowed instant video communication between airliners and the ground. So, with one of these things on every airliner that is also delivering movies back to satisfied airline customers, it looked like a done deal, but it wasn't a done deal because it wasn't a product. They never had a product. Okay, and it turns out that there's a lot of companies like that out there. This one was particularly notable because it was also trafficking drugs. It bought two. This is how brazen these guys were. They bought two DC-9s to demonstrate their non-existent product. All right, they had nothing to put on the DC. Oh, when they because I talked to employees when they gave briefings for the press and for potential investors, they would show Brent communicating with an airliner in the sky and feeding a movie, and then you could watch a movie coming down. And it was all videotape. It was videotape.
Well, and let me guess, the flights were to Colombia.
The planes did.
Yeah.
The planes. When the DC did, why are we interested in this?
Yeah.
Because this Khashoggi affiliated company, all right, in Tampa, who had a number of former military intelligence operatives as officers for the company, okay? They would show Brent communicating with an airliner in the sky, and then you could watch a movie coming down. And it was all videotape. And had a plane busted with 5.5 tons of cocaine in 2006. And at that time, it was a record amount of coke busted on a plane. I'm sure that record has been eclipsed many times since, but that was it. 5.5. Now, remember Barry Seal, America's first famous drug smuggler, was trafficking in 1-ton lots, basically, and usually less. So here's a 5.5 ton load getting busted. So you're interested in the company that owned the plane. Only they were able, and this is like a terrific way to do it. Okay, if you have a plane that gets busted overseas, you don't lose the plane. You get it back, because what you do is you file paperwork with the post bus. You file paperwork with the FBI that shows the plane's been sold. Mm. This was an American registered plane busted with 5.5 tons of cocaine, and yet they faxed paperwork to the FAA showing the plane had been sold, but the paperwork was faxed to the FAA 5 days after the plane was busted. Now, I'd take that deal. And it goes on from there. So, okay, and here's why we're interested in drug trafficking, okay? Because drug trafficking makes up 50% of the income of transnational organized crime, okay? Organized crime, period. So you think of everything that, all the fingers that organized crime has their pie in, okay? Construction unions, cement, extortion. You think about kidnapping, everything, all of that, and it doesn't equal quite as much as the outfit makes on smuggling drugs. So, we are talking about the biggest slush fund in the history of the world, okay? And as long as drugs are illegal, it will remain that way, because that's what makes it 6 times more profitable than it would be otherwise. So that pile of money, which probably goes from here to the moon, is being divvied up every year secretly by a number of people, none of whom are you and me. You follow me?
Yes, I do.
So that's as far as I got. You know, I mean, that's what I know. That's what I know. That's what I see. We're talking a huge pile of money, made huge because it's illegal. And here's what I've learned in almost 20 years of investigating the drug trade. Okay, and I can boil it down to a line. In every country on this gangster planet that has a significant retail market for drugs, who controls that market are the same people that control the country. The country. Okay? So who they are is like, who knows? I mean, you know, in France, there are these guys. In England, you know, same people that control the country.
Now, you were telling me, too, though, about a secretary in Las Vegas who lost like $40,000 investing in this.
Oh, yeah. All right, so Brent Kovar was a con man, all right, who was fronting for a CIA-affiliated organization headed by Adnan Khashoggi, running drugs. So after everything that happens, they never went to jail. I mean, these guys stole $40 million of investor money, and they owned the plane that was busted with 5.5 tons of cocaine, and they were charged with civil fraud by the SEC. But that's when you learn that the SEC is no big deal. I mean, because they can't charge anyone criminally. So Brent Kovar gets off, and I don't hear about him for 10 years. because this is all back, 2007 to 2010. And then I get a call from a woman in Las Vegas who found my name online when she did a search on the people that had just stolen her nest egg. $40,000. And of course, if you do a search on my website, Mad Cow Prod, you find like 500 references to Brent Kovar. So she lost $40,000 on a scheme, and she'll never get it back, and and she was upset, and she wanted to know who this guy was, and so I told her, which wasn't able to get her money back.
Yeah.
Because she said to me, she's a legal secretary or something. She's a notary public. She seems like a nice lady, pretty good looking from the shot I found, but I never met her. I found on her web page. I mean, on her
OnlyFans.
Well, I mean, I did a search on her name afterwards, right? She tells me I lost $30,000. It was everything I had. And she's got two kids, and no husband, right? And then several days after that, another woman called me from Colorado, and she said, my dad was found in a pool of blood. My dad was found dead in a pool of blood. And so that's where I got into the story. All right, so there's a company, a Vegas company called Profit Connect, headed by Eddie Kona, who was murdered in Vegas.
Oh, really?
And that Kovar was deeply involved in. It was a Ponzi scheme of Brent Kovar's called Profit Connect Wealth Services.
Let me ask you a quick question, because we only got a couple of minutes. And I'm on your website here, madcowprod.com, and I see Jerry Falwell, Wally Hilliard, and transnational organized crime. What does Jerry Falwell have to do with this?
Oh, Jerry Falwell was involved with Wally Hilliard.
Really?
On the flight. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jerry Falwell,
yeah.
Jerry Falwell Sr.?
Yes. Okay. I met Wally Hilliard's accountant who had fallen out with him over something. Okay. And he told me the whole story, and then I confirmed it with in Lynchburg. And then there's another interesting thing. Okay. Wally Hilliard, the guy that owned the flight school, loaned Jerry Falwell $1 million that Falwell never felt the need to repay.
Wow.
Okay. Hilliard's accountant told me that he would get together. He would speak with Falwell's accountant, and Falwell's accountant was always like really shamefaced and sorry about it, and would say, every time I try to scoop some money together to repay your guy at the end of the month, Jerry swoops in and takes it out. so go figure.
But what publicly? What was their business relationship between these two?
I don't think they had any. I don't think I ever got an answer from Hilliard. I mean, I eventually met Wally Hilliard.
Yeah.
Who was a real smooth piece of work. Okay. He had a gray cashmere sweater, the Augusta National Club, where they hold the Masters, right? And he had a standard phrase. I asked him a whole bunch of questions. and I sounded appropriately outraged because I was younger then. And his answer, it was like taking the fifth each time. He would say, because genius has a limit, but stupidity has none. meaning he had been dumb to even think about doing what I was accusing him of doing, which put him in no legal jeopardy I knew of. So it's a pretty smart thing to say. So there you go. I mean, there's a Vegas connection to the Tampa miscreants, and these people had a pretty significant effect on our national life.
Yeah.
I mean, these terrorists were training at this guy's flight school. Okay, so and he's doing other things besides they were running a weekly drug plane to Venezuela and back, but he's doing other things besides that. He's this is the guy that owns the flight school. He's in Cuba, doing business, trying to get Fidel Castro's government to approve the Mormons buying a $10 million ranch in Cuba, 10 million acre ranch in Cuba.
Is Wally Hilliard alive today?
He's got Alzheimer's.
Okay.
I'd call him, but he's living in sort of an Alzheimer's type place in Wisconsin. He was divorced by his second wife, by the wife that he had, and when all this happened, So there, dude.
What more could you want? Probably one of the greatest stories of the century, 9/11, and the guy that ran the flight schools. I mean, and you hardly hear anything about the flight schools anymore, involved in all this kind of shady business. Jerry Falwell. By the way, too, our friend of the show here, Mark Ebner, has a book coming out with one of Jerry Falwell Jr.'s pool boys. And there are more than one pool boy with the whole Jerry Falwell Jr. story. And Go ahead.
I take one look at him, and a picture of him and his wife.
Yeah.
I can understand it.
Well, the story is that Jerry Falwell Jr. still has Michael Cohen on the payroll. He still pays him monthly. So not that Cohen shouldn't talk about Trump's abortions and Trump's association with Epstein. That's a story that's out there. So that Jerry Falwell still has his still shilling for Trump even after all this time. I wonder what those pictures are that Mr. Cohen negotiated for Mr. Falwell Jr. there. Daniel Hopsicker, thank you so much, my friend. The book is called Gangster Planet. When is it going to come out?
End of the month.
End of the month.
End of September. End of September. 30 days to now. Obviously available.
Trying date?
With my buddy, Chris, at Trine Day. I was out in Eugene, Oregon for a couple weeks last month, polishing it.
Gotcha.
So yeah, my have you met Chris?
We've never met in person, but I've known him for years, like 9 years, So
you ought to interview him sometime.
Oh no, I've interviewed him several times. But the thing is, he tells the same story every time. You know what I mean? I love Chris Milligan, but when you say, "Hey, who's Chris Milligan?" he tells that same story, man. So, but I love Chris Milligan, and
well, here's the thing, and I know you got to get going, but here's the thing. Chris was instrumental in helping me get my first book done. Okay?
No, yeah, he put me in touch with you. He's the one that gave me your number.
And so, I was always grateful to him, and I thought of him just as a guy had this one mild eccentricity. He was all on about skull and bones, right?
Yeah.
So until one time, I was in Connecticut, spending the weekend at my sister's house when he was in New Haven, doing research on Skull and Bones, and he invited me up. And I drove up to New Haven, where Yale is, and he walked me around downtown, and he showed me these tombs, right? And they're monstrous. They're huge. And it's like the best, it's the priciest real estate in New Haven. I mean, it's right down, I was shocked. And so at that point, I knew that there were things, more things in heaven and earth than I've thought of. And so, and later I found out Skull and Bones is who Barry Seal thought they were all working for. Yeah. So what are you going to do?
Daniel Hopsicker, thank you so much. We are out of time. You can find Daniel at madcowprod.com. And if you just go there and scroll through some of these articles, this guy's touching on all the kind of topics we love to report here on the Opperman Report. Gangster Planet coming out in 30 days on Trine Day Publications. Daniel Hopsicker. Thank you so much, my friend.
Good talk to you. Take care.
Good night.